Welcome to a live and virtual edition of Eye on the Hawks with Owen Sebring and Mike Howell. I am coming from Lloyd Noble Arena here in Norman, where I've got some Sooner trophies behind me in the arena back there. Mike, where are you coming from? Are you in your bedroom, or where are you?
No, I'm at my girlfriend's house in Iowa City. Watched the game down here, and yeah, we just finished wrapping up that first round game. And Owen, a little shaky to start with that foul trouble, don't you think?
I was a little bit worried there when Hannah Stolke got 2 fouls in the first 90 seconds, but that's the biggest difference with this team now, with Ava Heiden providing the minutes that she does, that Hannah Stolke can get into foul trouble. Not ideal still, but she can. And Ava can come in and spell her, and you don't really have any worries about the service that Ava provides in there, because Hannah didn't play again until I think the start of the third quarter. And I mean, the Hawkeyes hardly missed her out there. Ava Heiden provided such great help. She had, gosh, I mean, how many points did she have by halftime? Did she have 11, I think, in the first half?
Ava?
Yeah, Ava.
Yeah, 13, which was her new career high, and I think she ended with 15.
Yeah, man. So she just spelled Hannah, like, just a seamless transition between those two players, and that was one of the biggest things for this team, is avoiding any dips in production with foul trouble, because not only did Hannah get those 2 fouls, but then Ava, I think, had 3 fouls by the end of the first half, and Lucy Olson had 3 fouls by the end of the first half. And I pointed this out on X during the game, that I'm like, that last minute 40 of the first half was so crucial, because Lucy went out, Ava was out, Hannah was out, and I was still into the half on like a 7-2 run, I think, something like that. And so you were missing three of, if not your three best players, or at least three most productive players today, at least. And they still didn't have a dip in production. They were able to stretch the lead out by halftime, and that kind of set the table for what was to come in the second half.
Yeah, in that second half, they started on a 20-4 run, and when in that second quarter, you're like, okay, this is going to be a back and forth game, and they kind of just put the clamps down. Hannah Stokely only played 14 minutes, and most of that was in the second half because she played 1 minute. Ends with 11 points though. But one of the things that I was watching, I was like, it was almost a blessing in disguise, because Ava played amazing, and her size compared to the smaller front court that Murray State had, I think they have their tallest player 6'1". It really just, I mean, it was feed the ball down low, feed the ball down low. Ava could do, whatever she wanted. And then when Addie came in, she missed a few layups, but she still had good looks, and that's all you can really ask for. That was the theme of the day, was just a pound in the paint. You're a bigger team, and they got it done.
Yeah, and I think I was just kind of reading through the post game notes that Bailey Turner, Iowa's SID, sent out, and I think that they had their most points in the paint all season during this game today. Not only most points in the paint, but you had a NCAA tournament record for assists in a single game for Iowa. I think they had 28 assists today. I mean, the assist numbers were crazy. At one point in the second half, it was like 24-4 in favor of Iowa over Murray State. I don't know how many Murray ended up with, but they could not make a shot in the third quarter. I mean, Murray State, their last field goal of the first half came with like 4 minutes and 40 seconds left. And then their next field goal wasn't until there was about 1 minute left in the third quarter. So they went roughly, what is that? Gosh, like 13 minutes of game time without scoring a field goal. And I mean, in their defense, like along the way, like, I mean, that third quarter was just a disaster for Murray State, because their best player, Caitlin Wright, went down with a game-ending injury, and so she was out. And that team, number one, is totally different without her on the floor. And so Iowa could just do whatever they wanted in the paint. And then their other post player fouls out in the middle of the third quarter too. And it's like, there was just no stopping Iowa at that point. This game just totally fell over at that point.
Yeah, the Racers had 7 assists total in the game. And yeah, once Caitlin Young left the game, I think she had 6 points in the first half. And she is, I think, 3rd or 11th in the country in scoring, the 22.2 points per game.
Wow.
So it was really a big advantage for Iowa. And one of the good things you get to see is you get a rest in the fourth quarter. I saw your tweet, Callie Levine's first points, and Jada Jimphy had a bucket. It was just at one point, and I can't remember if there was a player who everyone who touched the floor got a bucket. And I think that was true, because AJ took a shot too. Let me look through the.
Yeah, AJ had 4 points, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, every player on Iowa who played got at least 1 point.
Yeah, the only 2 roster players who didn't score were Kenise Johnson, who's missed the last 2 seasons with injury, and Keegan Mullaney, who didn't make the trip down here because she's in concussion protocol, which we just learned yesterday.
Okay.
But yeah, everybody who played for Iowa today scored. Callie Levine's first points as a Hawkeye. Jada Jimphy, apparently it's her birthday today, I believe. And so everybody getting good production. Yeah, I mean, you love seeing that in an NCAA tournament. The team was loving having all the role players, all the bench players get a chance to get in there. And yeah, like, just completely fresh legs going into their next round game against. I can't see from here what the scores of the Oklahoma-Florida Gulf Coast game, but assuming it's Oklahoma, you're going to need those fresh legs for Hannah and Ava and Lucy and Sid and everybody else who didn't have to play those full minutes. I don't remember even the last time where I saw an Iowa game where everybody scored a basket. Like, you know, you might see that in an exhibition game, but even last year, it was just kind of rare to get everybody out there and just to score a field goal. So that is a rarity with this team. Yeah, everything just, you know, when I was talking to players after the game, my main questions were about like, gosh, it just seems like everything was going right, even though that first half was close. That was just, you know, Murray State really played a good first half and had a good plan against Iowa. But outside of that, everything just seemed to go exactly as Iowa wanted it to. And a lot of times when you have, I mean, they've been off for 2 weeks. Like their last game was played Friday against Ohio State 2 weeks ago. So it's been whatever, 15 days since their last game. But it just seemed like not much rust, if any, for the Hawkeyes out there.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to mention, and I don't have the first half stat book in front of me, but I was like 3-point shooting in the first half was a little suspect. I know Taylor Stremlow hit 2 today, but they ended the day shooting 43% from beyond the arc, which is pretty good. Yeah, Taylor McCabe went 3 for 4. Sid had 1. Kylie Feuerbach 2 for 4, and Lucy was 0 from beyond the arc, but she still scored 12 points, had a double-double with 12 assists. And you mentioned
career high for her too.
Yeah, up for assists. And then like right now, this is not live, so this is recorded, so the game could change, but Oklahoma's up 31-17. And looking ahead, if it's going to be Oklahoma, the one thing I'm looking at is, you know, Oklahoma's a much bigger team than Murray State. So you're going to have to win in a different way. They have 2 players that are 6'4". I assume Ava Heiden, you know, played a lot because that size disadvantage. You can't have the foul trouble you had today on Monday if it's Oklahoma, but they have 2 other extra 6'3" players. It's going to be tough to win the paint battle, and they're probably have to shoot lights out if they're going to want to beat Oklahoma and Norman.
Yeah, and that's going to be the biggest story. And I think what we saw today is at least giving Iowa some confidence that can happen because of the way that, I mean, when Hannah was in there, she played quite well. Obviously, Ava played great. Addie O'Grady, I mean, she was productive at points. You know, she missed a couple of easy layups that she probably needs to make. But overall, you know, the team kind of knows what they're going to get out of Addie O'Grady, that she can be a good defender. And, you know, she has games where she can be a good shooter. But yeah, those 3 are really going to play a lot of minutes. I don't know if we've seen hardly any times of Ava and Hannah on the court at the same time. But we might need that against Oklahoma because, yeah, that's a huge lineup that they're going to have a lot of problems with.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, the one player that probably, I think if you asked her, she, you know, feel like she didn't play as well as she could have is Ava Heiden. She shot 2 for 5, scored 4 points, but she tried to make things happen with the dribble drive penetration and some shots that just didn't go her way. So maybe she's an X factor on Monday. She's been a spark plug all year coming off the bench. And yeah, Ava Heiden right there, like she's gonna have to put in some real minutes against Reagan Beers and those other bigs at Oklahoma. So you know, if it is Oklahoma and if it's not, then this podcast is gonna seem kind of weird. But it'll be interesting to see, you know, how the bigs play on Monday.
Yeah, Sahara Williams, the Waterloo West grad, she's going to be a problem for those guys down in the paint. Going to be an interesting throwback to some Mississippi Valley Conference high school games from a couple of years ago when Hannah Stolke and Sahara Williams would have gone against each other when Wash would play Waterloo West. And we're going to see that again probably here on Monday when it's Iowa, and we assume Oklahoma going to be playing in that game. Yeah, the freshmen, again, such a storyline. We talked about that through the whole Big Ten tournament, that the freshmen were the story, and that seems to be the case again today with Ava coming off the bench, playing a great game. Taylor Stremlow really was solid. I mean, Aaliyah Guyton, like not her like biggest scoring performance, but still like, you know, handled the ball well and did pretty all right out there. As we mentioned before, Tegan Mulaney did not make the trip. She's out with concussion protocol. We haven't had a chance. We'll talk to the team tomorrow. So we'll have a chance to talk to Jan about whether or not Tegan is going to come down. She still could come down and join this team for the second round game, but we don't know if it's going to happen there. And then, you know, again, when we round out the 5 freshmen, you had Callie Levine scoring her first points. So the freshmen still kind of a talking point with this team coming into tomorrow now.
Yeah, the one thing that I think Iowa can exploit, though, on Monday, assuming it is Oklahoma, is the Sooners turn the ball over 18.9 times a game. That ranks 332nd in the country. So,
Wow, really?
and Iowa is one of those teams, and Kylie had a few steals today, and with active hands who can steal the ball and create turnovers and get points in transition and turnovers. So that's maybe one of the exploits that they can do on come Monday. If it is Florida Gulf Coast, given a little bit, this might be obsolete by the time this airs. They only have two players over 6 foot, and they're 6'1".
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so if they do come back, it could be a scenario where what we're seeing today is what we see on Monday. I don't
Yeah.
think it's likely. I think Oklahoma's going to, roll on their home court. Actually, the game's playing right behind you on the TV screen.
If you look closely. Oh, wait. Oh,
Yeah.
is it up there? Oh, yeah, there we go. 31-23, Oklahoma leading. Close game for a 3-14 matchup in the second quarter.
So that's kind of what we're looking at if it's Florida Gulf Coast. Last year, the two teams played in the first round, and Oklahoma only won by 3 in the tournament. And there was a last second 3 that missed for I don't know what the nickname for Gulf Coast is.
Eagles, I think.
Eagles, okay. Yeah, so there was a close game last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept it close today, but I do expect Oklahoma to win that one. But yeah, solid performance. After that week off, you can't ask for anything else, right?
Yeah. I was just going to say that I think that's Florida Gulf Coast specialties. I think they're a 3-point shooting team, so that'd be the biggest storyline if they were to advance. But what you are encouraged by is Iowa's defensive performance. I mean, again, today their defense was about as good as I've seen it all year. Granted, again, they were playing the second half without Murray State's best player. So Murray State averages 88 points a game. Today they scored 57, so 30 points below their average. Granted, again, if Caitlin's in there, you're probably going to give up at least 10 more points to her, you got to think. Yep. But regardless, still, just for them to shut down a team like that on defense so completely and thoroughly through pretty much the whole game. I mean, even in the first half when Murray State was fully stocked, they only scored 30 points. So that still would only be an average of 60 points if they had that in the second half. So Iowa about as good defensively today as you could ask for them to be.
Yeah, Murray State was the top scoring team in the country coming in. But again, they played the Missouri Valley Conference. It's a little bit lower step than the Big Ten with, 2 number 1 seeds. There's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. Iowa's battle tested. They played top line athletes. So they've experienced that. They looked poised. And yeah, I think if Caitlin Young's in the game, they probably score a little bit more points, but I don't see it being close at all. So really encouraging because, going in, it was 6-11. You never know what happens. That game can swing the other way,
Yeah, men's games, that's almost a toss-up. 6-11 upsets happen all the time in men's basketball. Women's, I mean, we've kind of seen it. If you've been following the women's tournament at all, I feel like that's what we've seen all through this first round is that the lower seed, a lot of these mid-majors can hang with a team like this in the first half, and they'll have it maybe within a single-digit lead in the first half. But it seems like the depth and the experience and the what do I want to say? Just their stamina to finish a full 4 quarters is just different than the mid-major teams, and that's why. I mean, the outcomes of the men's tournament games, even with the 3-14, 2-15 games, it's it's respectable at the end. But the women's tournament, I mean, they're just absolute devastating blowouts in these games. And so it's just kind of a different level, I think, when you go from the mid-major to the power conferences with women's basketball.
Yeah, and I think they said before the game it's been pretty chalky in the first round yesterday, with the only upsets being 8, 9, and 7, a couple 8, 9, 7, 10 games. So nothing out of the ordinary. Actually, the men's games have all been chalky too. All the top 4 seeds have advanced for the first time in 25 years or something like that.
Really?
So, yeah, I don't remember the exact amount of years, but it's only happened 3 times where every top 4 seed has won in the men's tournament. So maybe it's just a chalk year all the ways, which for Iowa if Oklahoma advances.
Yeah. Anything that came up on the TV broadcast, obviously I'm watching from the base or from the sideline, and so I don't get a chance to hear what the talking points are. Anything else that came up on the broadcast that they mentioned as a storyline or something big that Iowa did today, or anything particular about the Hawkeyes?
No, they kind of talked about the foul trouble in the first half and Ava Heiden coming in and kind of running the show in the paint. 9 points in the first quarter. That's the most for her in any corner. I mean, obviously that's up closer to her career high because she scored 10 or 11 in the Big Ten tournament. Gets 15, sets a new career high. The Stokey foul was concerning early on, but it turned out not to be a big deal. And then just once Iowa kind of put the foot down on the gas, that's kind of mainly what they talked about. And the injury, of course, you don't want to see that even if you're a fan of the other team. You want to see a full strength team play against a full strength team. And it's kind of disappointing that that happened that way.
I know. Yeah, that was too bad for her. Too bad for their other post player who fouled out. I mean, she was just devastated after fouling out there in the third quarter. So tough way for their season to end. I mean, again, just like thinking they have to be thinking about the what ifs. It's like, oh man, what if we didn't get in foul trouble? What if Caitlin stayed healthy? But that's kind of the way that the postseason goes sometimes. So yeah, as a Hawkeye fan, you have to be encouraged by what you saw today and by looking ahead at this Oklahoma team that you're going to play in the next round. Just because Iowa again playing such good basketball in the postseason. I mean, we kept hammering this late in the season and during the Big Ten tournament that it's like this Iowa team is looking better than they have maybe all year. I mean, with the exception of like the USC game, obviously was outstanding, but they just look so good in the postseason right now that it seems like you just keep thinking that about any game could go Iowa's way.
Yeah, any game, and maybe not if they were to advance on Monday playing a UConn team. I don't know if you've seen the score. They won 103-34 today. So that would be a terrible, nightmarish matchup in the Sweet 16. But hey, you got to beat some good teams to make it far in this tournament. So I'm sure the girls would be ecstatic if they were able to advance that far.
Yeah, little trip out to Spokane, Washington. I've been looking at some photos of Spokane, and it's a beautiful area. Boy, they've got some. I keep thinking about like, oh, that there's a waterfall there. That make a great live shot location. So who knows how far their trip will go? But you have to like their chances against Oklahoma. I don't know a lot more about this team. We were talking to them for a while yesterday, just about the local connections. Again, two kids from Eastern Iowa and Aubrey Jones and Sahara Williams. They're on that roster. Jenny Baranchek, who played for the Hawkeyes under Jan and Lisa back in the early 2000s. And she seems like just such a easygoing and likable coach. The players seem to really like her a lot. Your classic Midwest Iowa gal. So yeah, they just seem like they're going to be a fun team to match up with. And I don't know. I think that there's a lot of mutual respect between these two programs. And so like, even if this is the game where Iowa bows out against Oklahoma, there's going to be a lot of Hawkeye fans still rooting for the Sooners for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, 100%. And I said it before during last week's podcast after the selection show. Win one game, give it your all against Oklahoma, and I think that's a successful season given where Iowa was in the middle of the Big Ten play. Obviously, you want to advance as far as you possibly can, and if Iowa were to win on Monday, it would be the 6th year in 8 seasons that they make this at least a Sweet 16. Of course, the 2020 it was canceled the tournament, and then 2022 they lost to Creighton at home as a 2 seed, I believe. I think it was a 2-10 matchup in the second round. So, I mean, that's just putting Iowa in that upper echelon of Big Ten women's programs if they can continue to do that. But, it's going to be tough regardless. I still think it would be. Oh, and you got to sit in Lisa's post game. Did she say anything of note after today's game?
Did you call her Lisa?
Yeah, my bad. Jan Jensen, Lisa on the mind. You got to sit in on Jan Jensen's presser, did you?
I didn't sit in on her presser, but we did interview her in the hallway afterwards, which, by the way, the hallway here is just outrageous. I was going to post a picture of this because, like, there's enough room in the hallway for the player and then the interviewer, and that is all. And so you've got a lot of, like, Jan Jensen is, like, ducking under my camera as I'm interviewing Sydney Afalto. Like, she's got to, like, get down low to try to avoid stepping into my shot. And so the hallways here are outrageous here in Oklahoma. But we're powering through. But no, Jan didn't have a whole lot to say in terms of like anything substantial. I mean, she talked about where there's a lot of conversation about Ava, as there was in the Big Ten tournament as well. And we talked about this being her first NCAA tournament game as head coach, and any advice that she received from Lisa Bluter before coming in. And she just said that, Lisa kind of talked to her about like just staying calm, not getting too worried about it. She said it reminded her a lot of the Northern Illinois game, which was the regular season opener for Iowa, because there's just a lot of question marks going into that. If you're Jen Jensen too, just about your first regular season game, now with your first tournament game, there are just a lot of like, okay, what's it going to be like? What am I going to feel like out there? And so she just spoke about what that meant to her. And those interviews we talked to, I think, every starter and then a couple of subs today after the game, and Jen Jensen. And you can watch those full interviews on our YouTube page. A lot of just tons of content coming after this one. And so you can find those there. And then, of course, keep following Eye on the Hawks and Iowa's News Now. I don't know if we want to get this wrapped up here pretty soon, but I figured it was a good time to at least start plugging the social medias.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's time to wrap. We've got the one thing I did want to mention is I thought Jan did an excellent job in her coaching strategy today. The only, minor criticism is when Ava gets that second foul, you just have to sub her immediately, right? I know she had Addie O'Grady come up to the scorers table, but I've seen it before where that player is ready to go if they get that second foul and they jump in, and there was a stoppage of time and Ava didn't come out. She got her third foul, ended up not hurting Iowa.
Sure.
So,
yeah. And if the situation's different with Hannah Stolke, maybe that doesn't happen, or like it's not as much of a question mark. But
sure.
yeah, you got to think that got to have that player ready to go, or the mindset might be different. But yeah, in the end, any questions that we had during the game about coaching or otherwise are just kind of out the window now. And now you start looking ahead to facing the Sooners on. Do we don't have a game time for that game yet, do we?
I think they get the game times after every game's complete today.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if that ends up being a afternoon or evening game. But yeah, we're going to start looking ahead. And tomorrow we've got a lot more storylines to cover. Assuming that Oklahoma comes out on top of this one, we'll be talking about a former coach facing off with her former player from the early 2000s as Jenny Willis Baranchik comes here and is going to be facing off with Hawkeyes on Monday afternoon or Monday night. So let's put a wrap on this thing, and appreciate all the live, what am I saying, live? Not live viewers, but anybody who's watching. Sure, thanks for tuning in. We'll have live podcasts in the future, I'd imagine. But again, check out our Eye on the Hawks social media pages on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. Check us out on Iowa's News Now as we have updates all throughout this tournament. And me, Owen Sebring, you can see me on X with posting live throughout the games. And I'll have a lot of content on Sunday as we wrap up our interviews with this team and with some of the Sooners that we chat with. So thanks again for joining us on this podcast, and we'll talk to you again soon. Again, Owen Sebring for Mike Howell as well. We'll see you again next time.